Since y'all getting mad, I don't get no credit. I'm saying like I don't have I don't have like 200 subscribers right now, bro. Haunted Autopsy, the infamous case of the Acid King. Here's the link for any y'all complaining. I'm saying I hate you, yo. Stop commenting, bro. Like I don't care, bro. I would never look at the Actually, I will look at the comments. Do something respectful in the comments, bro. Please.
I don't think you can do. And you don't have to beg like in a church. You just tell them what you want and get it.
Say, oh hell, buddy, what?
The inverted cross. Now this is satanic. This is a very generic symbol.
Heavy metal music. The rock show Mission Death Fest 1 is being staged at the Jackson Optimus Sports Arena. It was originally supposed to happen in Detroit, and the switch.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. Living in the 80s and the 90s is, living in the 60s to 80s in America is scary, bro. Imagine, look, I'm gonna tell you right now, bro. Right? First off, you got the obvious segregation. Some people still being slaves, you know what I'm saying, because even though it was illegal, some people still got slaves, you know what I'm saying. Nobody's here like, oh, that's fucked up. Nah, some people still got slaves back then. Then you got music coming out, and you got satanic people coming out. Then you got more and more cults coming out. Then that's when more and more drugs are coming out. So now everybody's gonna try something, right? That is just scary, bro. I can't imagine that.
In Jackson concerned
this 28 minutes.
Satanic worship.
I would never worship
Early in the
that.
1980s, the satanic panic had started mainly in the United States and eventually into other countries throughout the late 90s. Some argue that it's still going on to this day. It was a moral panic that started due to rumors spreading across country that people were performing satanic rituals. And during the 80s, American pop culture was obsessed with the occult and satanic imagery, which led to many people
believing that
magic, heavy metal music, and role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons would infiltrate the minds of the youth, leading them to worship the devil. Some parents believed devil worshippers would roam around the streets looking for human sacrifice, doing drugs, and selling it to kids. The problem is none of these claims were able to be backed up since there was nothing to prove that these events had ever occurred, until the case of a teenager who went by the name the Acid King.
Hell no. Nah, he look like a demon, bro. I'm not gonna lie. He look like a demon. Nigga be playing with the demons. Nigga be fiending. Oh hell no.
In the quiet suburbs of New York's Northport community on Long Island, Ricky Kasso was born. He was named after his father, Richard Dick Kasso, who was a well-respected history teacher and football coach at Cold Spring Harbor High School. His mother, Lynn Kasso, was a teacher as well. To avoid any confusion, I will be referring to Ricky's father by his middle name. Ricky's parents would later have more children, and Ricky would be the oldest, as he had 3 younger sisters. For some time, Dick and Lynn would describe Ricky to be the greatest kid in the world, and Dick believed his son had a bright future ahead of him. He would describe Ricky as a model child and a young athlete. As a young boy, he would wake up early in the morning to play football with his friends, and occasionally with his father. Although Ricky's bright future would soon start to fade away when he started the 6th grade. He would slowly become rebellious and started to smoke marijuana at the age of 11. And this was just the start of his interest in drugs, devil worship, heavy metal, and the occult.
Hell no. Alright, bro. Don't show me that. Tripping, bro. I like God.
When Ricky was 13, he befriended a boy by the name of Jimmy Troiano in the 7th grade. The two met at school during football practice. Jimmy was someone who was a promising athlete as well, but was also rebellious just like Ricky. You see, Jimmy had been in juvenile hall before for almost
he looks like an actual demon, bro.
a year and already had experience with using and selling acid. The two hang out quite often, experimenting drugs together. It started out with smoking marijuana to later graduating to stronger drugs like mescaline, LSD, and PCP. Eventually, the two would begin skipping class and football practice to meet up and do drugs. A classmate of Ricky's remembers him walking into art class and began drawing a dragon where he kept mentioning that the dragon was moving. Though this would just be the beginning. As his use of drugs increased, so did his anger problems.
Look mad at the world.
During a football game, Ricky was ejected for an illegal hit he did on the opposing quarterback, and Ricky's father was angry. Now, I mentioned Ricky would play football as a kid, but Jimmy stated that Ricky hated football. He says it's because Ricky never liked the sport at all and always made comments saying, "I hate this sport, I hate this game." Jimmy also added that Ricky only played football because his father would force him to. Over the years, the two would continue to use drugs and get high together. Ricky eventually stopped caring about school and football and would ultimately drop out of high school when he turned 16.
Damn.
Ricky became well known for not only his use of hallucinogenic drugs, but selling them as well. Because of his reputation, the younger teens had looked up to him because he was always in possession of acid, and depending on his mood, he would allow these young teens to take a hit of his drugs for free. This is when he would begin to call himself the Acid King and would start obsessing over the idea of devil worship and the occult. His former classmates have stated that Ricky would hang out a lot at cemeteries where he would smoke 10 bags of PCP so that he can get in touch with the devil himself and chant, "Satan, Satan, Satan."
Yo, bro, you don't get creeped out making these videos,
someone, they
bro?
stated the following: Ricky was of the devil. When he was on acid, he'd go back into the dark woods up in Estequia and he would talk to the devil. He said the devil came in the form of a tree which sprouted out of the ground and glowed.
Whoa, 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 whoa. See, now I'm actually getting scared, bro. Because if y'all know Edgar Allan Poe, right? A famous poet, or like the best American Gothic person or whatever. Why did he say in his thing? And this is in this is like in the 1800s, I'm pretty sure. Right? 1800s, he says, the devil came from a tree, disguised as a tree, all burnt and ashed, and he glowed. Why does he say is like this? Why did he say it? Yeah, see, now I'm getting creeped out, bro. Because there's two similarities 100 years separately. Not even 100, like 150 years, bro. It's insane.
And when he tried questioning Ricky about it, Ricky simply responded that he didn't like talking about it as people thought he was nuts. Ricky would show up at a library, picking up books on Satanism, wanting to learn more on the subject. Jimmy has said there were occasions where he'd be walking down the street and hear Ricky yelling out "Hell Satan" when walking by certain places. His obsession with Satanism didn't come from reading books like the Satanic Bible, which he had expressed interest in, or people who claimed to be Satanist. Instead, it came from his love of rock and roll and heavy metal music. A former classmate had mentioned that he would begin to notice a change in Ricky's appearance, from having short hair and always smiling to having long hair and always wearing concert t-shirts. One of the popular spots Ricky and his friends would hang out a lot was the gazebo in the park down by the waterfront. Ricky's behavior would get worse and there was no sign of him getting any better. It was unbearable to his parents. Ricky's father had made a statement about his son's behavior, saying he became insubordinate to his teachers, then joined in a house burglary and began to get in trouble with the police.
Damn.
Ricky had told his father,
I seen him before.
Fantasy world of drugs.
Actually, bro, I don't like this dude, but I feel like I can develop a let's say a Raymond. Oh my god, the fucking camera's. Oh my god. Okay, I think I could develop a type of Raymond condones type of thing with this.
Can't stop me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love drugs. He would scare his parents when they found out that he would write songs about Satan and would openly talk about his drug deals. He'll say things like, "Mom, I'm going down to get a few hits of meth. I'll be back for dinner."
No.
He even told his mother that suicide is the ultimate
They have a
high.
movie that came out about it.
He even went as far to put ketchup on his arm and call his mother, yelling at her, "See what you made me do."
Bruh.
And as her mother runs to check on Ricky, he would laugh when she sighs in relief when she realizes that it's not blood. They would often kick him out of the house whenever they were fed up with their son's behavior. Ricky would then occasionally live on the streets, cars, local woods, garages, backyards, and houses of friends. Ricky would discuss with a friend that he wanted to start a cult and eventually would create a loosely organized cult that referred to themselves as the Knights of the Black Circle. The cult had 4 members: Ricky, Jimmy, Albert Quinones, and Gary Lauwers. A local by the name of Dan Carson stated, "They used to take animals down here and cut them up, burn them, and stuff like that." He goes on to say that he believes that Ricky was the biggest influence in the group. The younger teens who looked up to Ricky would go to his shack where he would ramble on about Satanism, but the kids didn't care about any of that.
Yeah, I don't care
They
about none
only
of
looked
that.
for him because he was the only one who sold acid very cheap. His whole obsession with Satanism was irrelevant to them. Since Ricky wasn't living at home, he never reached out to his parents except for 2 reasons. 1, he was in trouble with the law, or 2, he was extremely ill. In the late fall of 1983, when Ricky was 16, he got arrested for digging into a colonial-era grave to steal a skull to be used in some sort of ritual.
Buddy.
He was held in jail for a day or 2 and was then released. He wouldn't be charged until the following year in April. And at this time, Jimmy was arrested for burglary and was sentenced to 8 months.
Oh yeah, lock Jimmy up.
Ricky's parents had tried to help him and sent their son to a drug rehab program at South Oaks Hospital, but to no avail. According to a local, he had talked to Ricky shortly after being released from the hospital. He says that Ricky got out by bullshitting the doctors. When he went in, they believed he worshipped Satan and shit. And he told doctors that he was fine, that he was gonna go back to school and doesn't believe in Satan anymore. And he bullshit the doctors so much they finally believed him and they let him go. Another local has said that he ran away from the hospital. When she saw him at the train station, she noticed Ricky's hair was now red to avoid being found. She asked Ricky, "What's going on?" And he goes, "No way are they gonna lock me up. I'm not crazy." I was like, "I never said you were crazy, but maybe you need help with drugs."
Damn.
He said, "I do not." And then he started yelling, coming closer. I talked my way out of it. I think Ricky stopped living in 8th grade.
Damn.
In April of 1984, Ricky had a court hearing, so he would go back to his home where he would shower. His father wasn't thrilled seeing his son there, but he was nice enough to still drive Ricky to court. After the hearing, Ricky was dropped off near a convenience store where he would ask his father for some money. His father declined and
nigga.
Ricky would kick his car, leaving a dent on the passenger side door.
What the fuck?
And this is when Dick had disowned his son and banned Ricky from his home. He told Ricky to never
This is when Dickhead is disowned. Alright.
come back, nor to ever
Dickhead.
contact him or his family.
Damn,
With
disowned
this,
is crazy.
Ricky's use of drugs would only further increase.
Oh, this is from the movie.
He and I were best friends. Okay, best friends. I was always there for him. Always back.
1984.
Ricky, Gary, and several other friends of theirs attended a party in the woods late at night. Ricky, being the acid king, had brought PCP with them. As the party went on, Ricky would eventually pass out from getting extremely high. As Ricky was passed out, his friend Gary wanted more PCP. So as Ricky was still unconscious, Gary stole 10 packets of PCP out of Ricky's pockets. When everyone woke up the next morning, someone informed Ricky that they saw Gary stealing the rest of his PCP while he was asleep.
I'll snitch.
Ricky became furious and confronted Gary, demanding he either gives his drugs back or pays them back. Gary refused that he had stolen any drugs from Ricky, but Ricky didn't believe him, so he had beaten him to a pulp.
Holy
Gary would give Ricky back 5 packets of PCP. Since Gary only returned 5 out of the 10 he stole, this meant he owed Ricky $50, and Gary promised
Only
he would borrow
50?
the money he owed from his parents to pay him back. But Gary wouldn't keep his promise, and Ricky wasn't going to let this go.
Nah.
For the next
hell
few
no.
days, Ricky would continue to beat up Gary. The problem
my
was
God.
that Ricky didn't even care about getting his money, or instead, Ricky would gouge out his eyes. When everyone woke up the next morning, someone informed Ricky that they saw Gary stealing the rest of his PCP while he was asleep. Ricky beat him. Gary only returned 5 and wasn't going to let this go. For the next few days, Ricky would continue to beat up Gary. The problem was that Ricky didn't even care about getting his money or drugs back. To him, this was all just to prove a point. Locals have said that Gary was afraid of Ricky and always seen getting chewed up and constantly getting his ass kicked. In one instance, someone saw Gary come out from behind a church. His jacket was ripped, cuts on one side of his face with blood dripping down. Another stated that she fixed his wounds up one time, his black eye and bloody nose. And Gary would tell her that Ricky was an asshole and that he bought a knife to protect himself because Ricky had told Gary that next time he was going to do more and it won't just be a black eye. A month later, Ricky was starting to get sick as he had pneumonia, so he went back to the home of his parents and asked for help. Despite what his father said of never coming back, Ricky's parents couldn't resist seeing their child in pain, so Ricky was sent to the Long Island Jewish Hospital. While Ricky remained in there, his parents wanted to have him institutionalized. They explained to the doctors about the grave digging incident, his daily use of PCP and other
Daily's
hallucinogens,
insane.
suicide attempts / jokes, and his threatening behaviors. But
I
the
would never try that
psychiatrist
shit.
didn't believe there was anything wrong with him. They said Ricky was antisocial, but was neither psychotic nor dangerous, so they let him go. Now that Ricky was back out again, he was still not done with Gary.
I love you.
On June 19,
That's
Jimmy
just-
was
that's
released
too
from
hard.
jail after serving
I
8
never was on.
months. He met up with Ricky and Albert. The three were planning to go to the Aztecia woods to get high. But what
Aztec-
confused both
that shit
Jimmy and
sounds
Albert
crazy.
was when Ricky decided to invite Gary along. They believed maybe Ricky had finally let go of the whole drug incident. The four headed their way deep into the secluded woods at 8 p.m. They made a fire, and according to Jimmy, they took somewhere between 30 to 40 hits of PCP and LSD
Damn.
altogether. Now, these four have hung out in the woods at night before, but this night though was a bit different than the others. Reason was there were 3 crows that would circle around right above the teenagers'
Okay,
campfire.
bro. Okay, bro. Okay,
Ricky
okay,
noticed
okay.
this, and keep this in mind.
Okay. Hold on. Before we start this, you niggas are all high, bro. They're all high. Nigga, what y'all got no cameras, bro. There are no cameras over there, bro. These niggas are all high, bro. These niggas are all out their mind, bro. So you gonna believe them that they see 3 crows, bro? Don't tell me that satanic shit is real, bro. Don't tell me none of that, bro. I don't believe. We're done with the 80s, nigga. We're done with the 90s, bro. We're done with all of that. So don't tell me you seen 3 crows, 666, nah, and the blah blah. Don't tell me you seen all of that, bro.
As it will be important later on. As the night went on, the fire would slowly die out, so Ricky would suggest using Gary's jacket as a kindling.
Damn.
Gary would refuse to throw his entire jacket into the fire, but agreed to cut off and use his sleeves, and later his socks. As the fire started to die out again, Ricky suggests to cut Gary's hair to keep the fire alive. Gary would refuse, but Ricky didn't listen. He didn't want to hear a no from Gary, so Ricky got up and Jimmy held Gary down. Ricky cut out clumps of Gary's hair using the pocket knife he carried. Once cutting it, he threw it onto the fire and Gary said, "I'm getting bad vibes that you want to hurt me." Ricky replied, "Hurt you? I don't want to hurt you. I want to kill you."
I'm running.
Ricky immediately
I'm
pounced
running.
on Gary and bit him on the neck, then proceeded to stab him somewhere
Yo!
between 17 to 36 times.
Nigga did that
During the
like
stabbing,
Julius
Ricky had
Caesar.
shouted to
Rest in
Gary,
peace.
"Say you love Satan," and Gary wouldn't comply to his request. Instead, he would shout back, "I love my mother." Each stab, Ricky would tell him to say it, but Gary never does.
Niggas mad
Once
and
Gary
annoying,
was
bro.
dead, Ricky
Rest
would
in
gouge
peace,
out his
bro.
eyes.
Rest in peace.
Some
Fucked
people
up.
believe Ricky had gouged his eyes as some sort of satanic ritual, and Ricky had said that the crow is above cod. He believed Satan manifested as a crow, and the call was a sign that the devil was pleased of his doing.
Rest in peace.
And where was Jimmy and Albert during all of this? Well, we don't really know.
Wait.
You'll see.
So wait, what does Ricky look like? Oh, that's what Ricky looks like. Oh, not Ricky. This is what Gary looks like, and this is what Jimmy and Albert looks
Jimmy and Albert during all of this? Well, we don't really know. You'll see why. For 2 days, nobody knew about the murder of Gary for 2 reasons. One, his
So you
body
look
was
like- rest
deep
in
into the
peace.
secluded woods, so the chances of him being found were slim. And 2, he was a frequent runaway, so nobody really questioned about his whereabouts. But good old Ricky couldn't keep this to himself. He would later start
Bruh.
bragging to his friends that he killed Gary as a sacrifice to Satan. And Jimmy would tell him to stay quiet about it as he just wants to forget about it and move on. But Ricky didn't listen. According to a local by the name of Rich, he says he saw Ricky one night, and Ricky told him that he killed Gary, but Rich didn't believe him. The next night, Rich decides to see the supposed dead body because he thought Ricky was bullshitting as usual. As they head into the woods, he tells Ricky, "Rick, what the hell did you kill? A fucking cat?" And then Ricky points and says, "There it is." Rich finally saw Gary's lifeless body covered with a thick pile of maggots and leaves on top.
Bro.
Rich turned around and quickly ran off. He says Ricky seemed calm about the whole thing. As he meets with him back at the park, Ricky tells him, "See, I told you." And when asked why he did it, he responds with, "For kicks." For 2 weeks since the brutal killing, Ricky would continue to brag and show his friends Gary's body. But as days went by, both Jimmy and Ricky's paranoia would slowly increase. They returned back into the woods to move Gary's body in a shallow grave.
Jimmy.
His body was badly decomposed, and as they tried to move him, Gary's head came off.
Holy.
Afterwards, the thrill of the murder would start to fade for Ricky, and he was back to being bored. Jimmy and Ricky would leave Northport and planned a road trip to head to California. They planned on making a career by selling drugs. The next day on July 1st, a 16-year-old girl would call the police to report of Gary's body, but the officer who answered the call didn't see anyone by the name of Gary being reported missing. When the officer asked what the girl's name was, she quickly hung up. The officer simply dismissed it as some prank call. At this point, Ricky and Jimmy were 160 miles away from their hometown before they needed more money to be able to progress their road trip.
Damn,
They sold some mescaline and bought a junker car for $50.
50?
Back in Northport, on July 4th, 3 days after the call, the police decided to go to the woods to look for Gary, as they were confirmed by his mother that she hasn't seen Gary in a while. She even stated that she once got a phone call by someone with this eerie voice saying, "You'll never see your son again because I just killed him."
Damn,
Police used 4 canines and eventually found a pile of bones, a denim vest, pants, and a pair of shoes. Since his body was out in the woods for a little over 2 weeks, his body had been completely drained of blood and his face was practically gone. As police discovered what was left of Gary, Ricky and Jimmy decided to drive back home to party with their friends on 4th of July. The
But
two partied, got high on acid, and eventually both would sleep in their vehicle. The next morning, police got a call of a suspicious vehicle. When an officer arrived, he noticed it was both Jimmy and Ricky asleep in their vehicle, so the officer called for backup since they were considered as highly dangerous. Backup arrived and arrested the 2 teenagers. They were still sluggish as they were still high from the drugs, but as they started to sober up, Ricky went back to his old cocky ways.
yeah, they have videos of this nigga, bro. Bro, that's sick.
Ricky first told police that he didn't know anything about the killing and that he hasn't seen Gary in some time. But later, Ricky would confess to the murder, and the chief who interviewed him said he sounded so proud of what he had done, stating he got what he deserved. Ricky would sign a confess statement that he did the killing and Jimmy played no role into the murder. At least, that's what he told Jimmy, because in reality, Ricky was lying. He actually told police this: "I was holding him on the ground and Jimmy kicked him in the ribs.
Damn.
I looked up at Jimmy and Jimmy indicated to cut his throat. I then took out my knife and stabbed Gary. The knife went all the way in. Somehow, he got away and ran through the woods. I caught him and brought him back to where the fire was. I dropped my knife when I chased him, and Jimmy Troiano found it and gave me the knife, and I stabbed Gary in the back a whole bunch of times. Me and Troiano dragged Gary back in the woods. We started covering him with leaves and he sat up. I bugged out, started to stab him in the face. I didn't count how many times. I'm not really sure. I don't know what I said, but I said a whole bunch of satanic things."
Bro.
Now this
So, not only did dude just kill him, but this nigga pussied out and snitched on someone who didn't do nothing, bro. Hey, bro, Jimmy, you a bad guy, but still, my nigga, like you don't deserve to get blamed for a murder you did not do, but you did help get his ass beat. So like,
The story went everywhere.
They didn't do
and as you
nothing
can
about it,
imagine,
so.
the public were frightened, especially because of this murder linking to Satanism. But police didn't call this case satanic, but rather a drug-related murder. Ricky had seen himself on the news that night, and everyone in jail knew what Ricky was in there for.
Oh,
Jimmy
nah.
says Ricky was starting to feel scared because he didn't know what the inmates might feel about him killing in the name of Satan. And Gary's dad talked to the news wanting to distance his son from Satanism.
My son was not involved in any drugs, and he was fearful of this kid, Ricky Kasso, because he had been acquainted with him, maybe at a previous occasion, from school, and apparently also after school. So he was fearful of him, and it is my belief that he was abducted, that they were just waiting for him. They saw my son
Yo, this nigga keep whistling, bro.
victim that they needed, and abducted him somehow or other.
As the night went on, Ricky started to feel pressured, and within less than 48 hours, Ricky grabbed his bedsheet and hung himself, leaving his friend Jimmy all by himself. This now meant that Ricky's statement was useless and inadmissible. Albert had agreed to testify against Jimmy in return for immunity. Jimmy had signed 2 confessions that he later recanted. People thought this would be an open and shut case, but there was just one big problem.
Eyes were cut out in what county police say was a satanic ritualistic about a devil-worshipping cult of
Oh no. It's low-key a scary
Jimmy's
video,
attorney,
bro.
Eric Nyberg, talked to Jimmy asking his version of what had happened. He told Eric a strong, convincing story. They arranged another meeting and asked Jimmy again his version of the story. Again, Eric says it was a strong, believable story. And the problem? It was different than the first one, and he did it again a third time. So Eric decided to take him back to the scene of the crime, and again, a different yet very believable story. Eric calls him out on it and asks why is he constantly changing his story. Jimmy replied, "Mr. Nyberg, when the trees are melting and the stars are racing across the sky, it's hard to remember what happened."
Damn.
This is when Eric had a plan and knew how to win this case. The trial would begin a year later. In court, prosecutors brought Albert on stand and made him tell his side of the story. Albert's version was that Jimmy was the one who held Gary down while Ricky repeatedly stabbed him, and this was supported by medical examiners.
Something like 22 stabbing or cutting type wounds going up and down the back. The skull injuries were in the facial area. Something like 7 or 8 wounds there. One was a little lower down just above the upper teeth, but mostly they were in the region of the left eye.
I know
This
someone can do
pattern
that,
of
bro.
wounds certainly would be what you'd expect if someone were being held immobile and then someone else were doing the stabbing,
they would've moved
who's
their
right
face.
there just going up and down.
But
They
of
would've moved their
course,
face.
this is when the big problem takes place. Albert admitted to taking at least 10 hits of LSD prior to the killing, so this begs the question, is his testimony even reliable? If Jimmy can barely remember what had happened, how is Albert any different if he was just as high as the rest? To be able to prove this, Albert admitted to police that he saw a lion in the woods that night, so in court, Eric asked him if he saw a lion that night, to which Albert responded, he did not. Eric tells him, "But didn't you hear? There was a circus in town and a lion escaped." And Albert says, "You mean the lion was really there?"
Yo, he's cracked
This
out.
completely destroyed Albert's credibility, and it continues to get worse.
Yeah, he's cracked
On
out,
cross-examination for the first
bro. So you're
time,
telling me nobody knows the true story, bro? That's insane.
Albert admitted that prior to the attack, he had taken part in attacking Gary by kicking and punching him along with Ricky and Jimmy, and Albert would then recant his statement and said he was positive Jimmy never held Gary down. Eric would now make his closing statement to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, I humbly and respectfully submit that only God Almighty knows or will ever know what happened that night. If Jimmy Troiano or Albert Quinones deserve to be punished, it is the Almighty to make that decision." 3 days later, the jury returned with a verdict. Jimmy Troiano was found not guilty for second-degree murder.
Oh,
Port Long Island say death threats have forced them to post guards at the homes of 5 community residents as a grand jury continues.
yeah. I thought they said. Oh my god, I thought they said the Ricky dude was not guilty, bro. Like nigga, lock him up. He
Once
killed
it was
himself,
all
but
over,
still.
the media were going after rock and metal bands like Alice Cooper, Judas Priest, and AC/DC. And my biggest
I heard
guess is because
AC/DC.
these were commonly known as Ricky's favorite bands. After all, he was wearing an AC/DC shirt
yeah.
the day of his arrest. They also blamed role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons.
Damn.
People
That's
in
like when they blamed GTA 5.
Port were
For the
worried
little
that the
kids stealing
killing would leave
cars.
a bad reputation. But after many years, it was calm,
It's the media,
quiet,
bro.
and
What do you
nothing
feel
like
about
this
media?
ever happened again. Of course, this didn't stop people from believing devil worshippers were out there, spreading the words of evil.
Oh
Being
no.
sold for healthy reasons. Man, what's healthy about selling a knife to this and this?
I see this shit, man. I'm smacking the fuck out of you. So best believe me. Damn.
Vicky!
I'm
I don't know
smacking dude,
whatever
bro. He
happened
started
with
growling.
Albert after all these years, but Jimmy would appear in a documentary about Ricky Kasso titled Satan in the Suburbs that was released in the year 2000. There's an interview with Jimmy as well. Jimmy says he never really was pissed at Ricky after his death. He was mostly angry that he got himself in this mess. He also apologizes to Gary's parents and wished he was sober that night. I read a comment that Ricky's father had died of Lyme disease in the early 90s. Another that said Ricky's father was a piece of shit. But a crazy thing did happen with Jimmy. On October 9, 2004, he was arrested for robbing CVS Pharmacy, trying to get Oxycontin and fentanyl patches. He left a note to someone behind the cash register saying this.
Yeah,
he was sentenced to 12.5 years.
You're cooked,
The last
bro.
thing I could find was a comment saying he's happily married now.
Yo, he's actually cooked,
In that
bro.
same interview, Jimmy was asked what he would tell Ricky if
fentanyl wasn't even a thing back then, bro.
he was here right now.
Hope you said your prayers before you hung up.
Yeah. It's fucked up. That's not even fucked up, nigga. Fuck Ricky.
It's been 37 years since the murder of Gary Lauwers, and this case is still talked about a lot, but I barely find any YouTube videos on it. There was a documentary on this case that was released back in 2019, however it's unavailable. You can watch Satan in the Suburbs here on YouTube. I'll leave a link to the playlist down below, as well as the interview with Jimmy. There's a film based on this case titled Ricky 6, which is also available here on YouTube. I'll link that as well.
I'm not watching that either.
It's unfortunate we will most likely never know what really happened that night. Both of the surviving teenagers couldn't keep their story straight, and the one who confessed to the crime is gone. So, maybe Eric is right. Maybe only God will ever know what really happened.
Yup, now listen to... Yeah. Muddy, you're sick. I'm glad they removed that. I'm saying, W kids. I'm saying, all right, like and subscribe to the video, bro. Please, please, bro. I'm saying, I'm sick. Type shit. So I got a cold. Yo, follow my Instagram. It's kind of weird that I have dude as my profile picture after what he just did, but like and subscribe, bro. Please.
They forget all the shit that I did. I was feeding the team when I didn't have shit. I was taking a risk. Like I done got all of us.